caught surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too. We smiled and both embraced like old friends often do.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Gung Ho. Actually, this is my 8th episode with George Motz. He's the author of Capt, a book about him being in the service in the South and being, for the first time ever, involved in a new program where they were sending out casualty notification officers to knock on doors. And George, like me, we grew up in Nassau County. We had limited contact, if any, with blacks, poor blacks. But the service changed everything. I want to just finish what happened with, so all of a sudden, I'm the leader of the white boys, the Chucks. And we got some new guys in the barracks, and another big black guy calls me out in the barracks. Calls Joe, and he wanted to fight me. Standing in front of me, and I said, oh my God, again, another big guy, right? He's standing in front of me, and we're ready to go at it, and this black Marine walks up on my right, and that was him. I took it out of the class book, a photograph. His name was Bell, and he said to the black guy, the other black guy, I stand with Joe. That was it. It was over.
Yeah.
That was it. Gone. No more racial tension. Now, the sad thing about it is I know for sure that Bell was killed in September of 1967 in Vietnam. But you see, he was judging me, not being white. He was just judging me. He's Joe. Come on now. Right. It's like, that was the end of it. I applied for OCS, and after I finished all my training, I was accepted to OCS. Another grueling test, 10 weeks, really brutal. One black. He didn't make it. Went on to the basic school, no blacks. No black officers.
This is 1960.
This is now 1967.
67, okay.
67. No blacks. Then I get orders for Vietnam, and I go over to Nam, and I get assigned to a battalion, and let's say within a week being there, I get a rifle platoon. And what do I have? I have a lot of blacks, a lot of poor whites, and I have a platoon sergeant, Sergeant Head. He's already been there about 6 months, and he's like a legend already. This guy, over 6 foot, big broad shoulders. I mean, I looked at him and he started talking, and I said to myself, I'm going to listen to this guy and do what he says because he's a survivor and I want to survive. And I was right. This guy was top notch. He was with me for about 5-6 months, and we got so tight that the company commander got mad at me. He said, you're too close to your Marines. I'm afraid that when it comes time to make a decision about whether they're going to get killed or not, you're not going to make the right decision. That's not true. So he took the platoon away from me after I had him for 5 months because I was too close to them. Anyhow, Head finished his tour, but his best friend, who was my right guard, Sergeant Falafini, they were very close. They were with me for like 5 months. He got killed. Got killed really bad. That really hurt Head. But anyhow, Head left. And when he was back in the States, he sent me a photograph. And I looked at it, and I said to myself, my God, he's black. It never went through my mind. And I'm thinking that that's a black man. He's with a white woman. And I never thought of him being black. He's a Marine,
Yeah.
a really good Marine. And he was my friend.
Yeah, well, that's,
And that's all there was to it.
yeah, no, that's the way it should be. It's the way it should be.
What
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I basically, my depot where I was assigned in Charleston, South Carolina, was mostly all civilians and very few officers, 7 or 8 officers and a couple of enlisted men, all white. And one day got a word that a new lieutenant was coming down to replace the lieutenant we had in the finance and accounting division, and that he was good. I found out, the 201 file came in to me, that he was a black man from New York. So the 14 or 15 women working in this finance and accounting division refused to work with him. Colonel called him into their office and said, he's a lieutenant in the Army, you will respect him, you will work with him. He ended up very good, but when he came down, what the interesting thing was, he had never been in the deep South at all, never been south of the Mason-Dixon line, and he basically was, he had his whole back of his car was filled with gasoline cans filled with gas. He didn't be able to get service down as a northern black coming to the South. The Southern blacks knew where to get gas, but the Northerners not necessarily. And that was the whole idea, that he learned that from the Negro Motorist Green Book, which had all the information on that. Black guy from Harlem wrote the book. In 30 years, that was the Bible, how a black person could survive in the South. I saw, like I said earlier, for the most part, 100% of the time, a soldier, black or white, was treated very well by other black and white families. No question about it. Never saw any problem with that except one case. But the bottom line is that that was a white woman refusing to accept the fact that there were other soldiers killed from the area. She didn't care the fact just how many white boys had been killed. That was her hang up there, and I really resented that tremendously. But it worked out very well, and he came down, this lieutenant, and did a wonderful job, got accepted right away after a couple of weeks by the white women working in the finance and accounting division. The worst experience I had in terms of that sort of thing and seeing the real underbelly, the ugly underbelly of racism, was the order from, or request order from my commanding officer to go to a KKK rally. And I went to the KK rally, and what I saw there was no threatened hangings or lynchings or anything like that, but just basically just negative talk. I read the whole piece that I was one recruit supposedly, that's why I was able to go to the meeting, and the other recruit basically just spewed venom for 3 or 4 minutes and got a huge round of applause and a lot of amens during his presentation. And that to me was I didn't see it day to day, but I knew at sunset or after that's what would happen. In fact, in those days, there were 10,000 sundown communities in the United States. Not all in the South, but most of them. If you enter that community after dark and you don't live in that community, you can be arrested for DWB, driving while black. And many were kept overnight, given a fine, and told never to come back. So they're definitely, I saw it if I looked for it, typically after hours, but I didn't really look for it, but it was there for sure. And I found, when I first drove down to South Carolina, driving through, of all places, where Fort Bragg is located in North Carolina, right? And alongside the road on the right side, as I'm getting gas on the left side of the road, is a motel with a big sign out in front. Semicircle sign saying no coloreds in big 5-foot individual lettering all across the whole front of it. So that was the first indication I had that it was going to be different. And there were negatives like that, but there were also some offsetting positives to it. So there was some balance to it. But it was a fascinating experience for a guy that never had any relationship with white people, really, with black people, until I got down there.
All right. So actually, in Nam, I was assigned to this 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. We were an amphibious, what do they call this? We were an amphibious assault force. And we had no base in country. We came off 2 carriers and 2 other ships. So when we finished an operation, we would come back to our ships.
Mm-hmm.
and the officers had staterooms, and the Marines lived below, and they had bunks. And this is a photograph of the Lieutenant Ford, black, that shared a stateroom with me. And I don't know if you could see it, but he's on the deck of the Duluth, and he's just standing behind one of the machine guns.
Okay.
But we were we were roommates, and he was really, he was an outstanding officer. Everybody knew that. I thought maybe he was the best officer in the battalion. That's how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he made it through. And I found out later on he wound up teaching history in college. But he was an outstanding officer. Had nothing to do with his color. But, all right, so now in the field, we go out in the field on a mission. A lot of blacks, a lot of poor whites. And we had a policy called Get Checkerboard. You ever hear this?
No.
All right. Every fighting hole was either 2-man or 3-man. Every fighting hole around the perimeter.
Okay.
No matter what, how big. Every fighting hole had to be checkerboard. Had to be a white Marine and a black Marine in each fighting hole. That was mandatory.
Really?
Yeah.
By the local unit or by the
This
Marines
is the way
itself?
it was. Well, it was in my battalion. Get checkerboard.
Okay.
Every fighting hole, a black and a white. Or if you had 3 men, 2 blacks and a white, or 2 blacks, or 2 whites and a whole perimeter checkerboard.
Never heard that, no.
So you're sharing a hole. I mean, a foxhole.
Yeah, yeah.
And you got to depend on each other.
Sure.
As far as watch, one guy stays awake while the other guy sleeps, and they rotate back and forth during the night. And it's just one black boy looking out for a white boy, and the same all around the perimeter. Now, no problems. No racial problems out in the field. Never had a problem. I remember the night that we got a radio call down from battalion. They said that Martin Luther King Jr. had been killed, April 4th, 1968. We were set in a perimeter. The word went out. No reaction.
Really?
Nothing. Nothing. I mean, maybe I'm sure that some of the blacks, of course, felt terrible about it. No reaction. Anyhow, after that, I went back to the rear. I don't know why I went back to the rear. I don't know. But we had a company office in the Quine Creek Combat Base. Company office. A hard top with plywood walls. Yeah. So I went back for something, I don't know why, and it meant that I would get to spend the night in the company office and actually sleep on a cot, which is that was like a luxury. so I settled down for the night. I'm gonna sleep on a cot. There's still got to worry about incoming rockets and mortars and things.
Right.
But I'm gonna be able to sleep on a cot, and I could jump into the bunker nearby. And all of a sudden, about midnight maybe, I hear small arms fire right outside the office. I hear small arms fire. And I jump and I run into the bunker, and there's a firefight going on inside the perimeter.
Wow.
And I'm saying, at first I thought, oh my God, they're in the perimeter. No, they're not in the perimeter. The Chucks were fighting the Splibs. There was a firefight
Oh,
between the blacks and the whites inside the perimeter.
really?
Yeah. And I was like shocked. I said, I got the word, that's what's going on. I said, this is crazy. They're having a firefight in the rear area. This is crazy. And you can get killed in the rear area because of this. Anyhow.
Any fatalities from that at all or anything? Or?
I think there were, but when I went into the company office, I noticed there was a tent across the way, and there were a lot of blacks around the tent and in the tent. And when I got up, or when I went over there in the morning, it was gone. Nothing there. It was basically blown away.
Wow, wow.
But this is a photograph of us back in the Quang Tree area. That was our area. And you could see that in the background is a Confederate flag flying. They were fighting over that.
Really? Back then, huh?
They were fighting over the Confederate flag. The blacks, some of the blacks were adamant, they didn't want that flag flying. And they were killing one another.
That's amazing back that far, because that's, to me, is something that's come up in the last 10 or 15 years more than anything else.
In fact, there was it was a big problem. In the rear areas, not where you go out in the field, you can't, but there's actually a book that was written about my unit in 1969 out in the field, and they have a big racial problem. It's a big part of the book, and one of the blacks kills, they frag what they believe is, I think, a senior NCO, but they actually wind up killing an officer. And this is the guy that wrote this book, Carl Melantis. I think, he says it's fiction, but he's writing about his experiences. It was shocking to me that the racism had seeped all the way down into the field units, and it was a problem in the field units to such an extent that the black Marines wanted to kill a white Marine.
Yeah. That surprises me. That
it is. Anyhow, when I got back from Nam, that racial tension was gone, stateside.
Well, of course, they're talking about now 1968, 69.
I came back in
the
68.
period, I found from 65 through 69, when I finished my total obligation in the Army, the racial unrest was so incredible in this country. I mean, it was really, that was the worst. The Chicago riots, the Democratic Convention, all those things all coming around in that same time frame. And it was probably the toughest time we've ever had in our country as far as racial unrest. It doesn't surprise me in a way that it would spill over into the military, but I was out by mid-67.
I didn't, all that took place while I was still in the Marine Corps. All that stuff, the Chicago Convention and all that stuff, I was still in the Marine Corps stateside.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any problems stateside on that base, and everything was okay. Then when I went to work, I got out of the law school, I went to work with the Legal Aid Criminal Division. Then I saw horrible racism. I mean, that was like, white officers were routinely killing, black men, and they were getting away with it. Yeah. It was lynching, hanging had been supplanted by shoot them, and they did it.
Yeah.
They did it.
Yeah.
And they beat them, they killed them, and I wound up representing a lot of young black men. And I looked at them, and they were very similar to the Marines that I served with. In Nam, same age, the same, economic background. Now they had to deal with police brutality and the police and law enforcement dealt with them with impunity. They knew that, it would be really unusual for them to be caught and punished. Even if they got caught, they wouldn't get punished.
Yeah.
They would. So I saw a lot of that. I saw too much of that.
Yeah. It's still there to a certain extent in society. It's better than it was, but it's not. It's not perfect. That's for sure at this point in time.
I'm forgetting something so important.
Yeah.
When I was practicing law, I got involved in the boxing business in the early '80s. And I got involved to a client that needed a manager. And me and my dad went up to Gleason's one day to take a look at this fighter that wanted me to manage him. And they had two rings. And this guy, Blackie Hernandez, was in one ring, another fighter in another ring sparring. My dad said, the fighter that wants you to manage him, he's good, But this guy in the ring over here is going to be a champ, and his name turned out to be Mike McCallum. So I wound up managing Mike McCallum, right?
Okay.
He turned out to be a champ, but by the time he was a champ, we had falling out big time. But he was being trained by this guy. His name was Rocky Davis. Mike McCallum was being trained by Rocky Davis. And Rocky Davis was like, I got to know him real good. He was a really decent person. He was like a black version of my dad. In fact, they met and they really liked one another. Well, Mike McCallum was a snake. He was a sociopath. And he went through a lot of trainers. He eventually got rid of Rocky too. But Rocky trained several of my fighters. One day, Rocky walked out of Gleason's, was in Manhattan at the time, and then he walked out a few steps and had a heart attack and died. Right? We asked around, and it turns out Rocky didn't have any family up north. So I said to my partner at the time, I said, it's our responsibility. So we actually buried Rocky. Before that happened, I was telling my mom, Rocky, my dad had died in 1982. Rocky dies in 1984. I'm telling my mom that I and my partner are responsible for Rocky, everything about him.
Okay.
We got to lay him out, we have to mass, bury him, and we have to find him a plot. My mom says, no, you don't. You bury him in our plot with Dad. And that's what happened.
Okay.
It was crazy. He was laid out in an Italian funeral parlor, La Pola. He had a mass in an Italian cathedral in Canarsie, and he was put in our family plot in St. John's with my dad. That's how that was.
Well,
That's how my family was.
Yeah.
Then later on, a writer, I don't know if I could find it, he wrote a story about that in Boxing Beat. He called it Full Metal Jacket. And there's a story about me, that Full Metal Jacket, the Marine Corps, and about Rocky, and about McCallum. Again, my parents were so good and no prejudice.
Ahead of their times.
Yeah, way ahead.
Yep.
And after my dad died, he died suddenly. He was 62. Rocky was he was my surrogate father. I saw him every day. I spoke to him every night. And he was so, he was so good, and he had a way about him, like he would talk to you for like a few seconds, and he would know whether or not you were a good person or a bad person. He would like figure you out, a few phrases.
Some people have that instinct, the ability to do that.
And he had it.
Yeah.
And he hated McCallum.
Okay.
He actually trained McCallum on his way up, and McCallum had an incredible left hook. I saw what he did to him. He tied his right hand behind him for months.
Right.
All he could fight was the left hand.
Okay.
And it became devastating, the left hook, because of Rocky. Rocky taught me how to do the left hook, and then he didn't want Rocky to train him anymore. That's what a mutt McCallum was. McCallum became a champ, but he never fought anybody, at a really high caliber, because there was something about him. I could have got him a fight with Roberto Duran.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he wouldn't fight him
Why?
because he was scared.
Oh.
I said, "This is crazy." I told him. Madison Square Garden, the Harold Weston offered. He said, "Joe, put Mike in with Duran." Of course, Madison Square Garden. I went to Mike McCallum. He wouldn't take the fight. I said, "You got to be crazy. You could beat Duran. He's ready to be beat. He's on his way down. You're on your way up. You'll be you'll be famous, you'll make sure. He wouldn't take the fight. Duran took a fight with someone else, and guess what? The guy beat Duran. And then Duran kept fighting. And as he kept fighting, he got better and better and better, and he wound up taking another title or two at a higher weight. Mike McCallum could have beaten him. And he would have gone on and got really big fights. He never really got a big fight. And one of the reasons is that he left me. He basically, you know, got away from me or left me. And when people saw that, they said, wow, he left Rocky behind and he left his manager behind. He's going nowhere now.
Yeah, yeah.
But Rocky knew that it was bad. All right, got a minute to go. I just want to sum this up. I want to say that your experience and my experience with blacks, I don't think it's not the norm, I don't think.
Probably not. I've always viewed people as people. And I always preach to my kids, you know, there's good in everybody and there's bad in some people, and find the good in people. You find the good in people, they can be every color, every religion, whatever, every nationality. Find the good in people. And they've all done that.
That's where I was brought up, but it was reinforced by what happened in the Marine Corps. I think that going in the service, especially now that the units are integrated, it's a really good thing. I mean, it's a shame that that's where you would come in contact with so many blacks and Hispanics.
Yeah, my whole military experience, you know, being in the military, number one, was a great experience, but then being in the South was a great experience. It probably would have been there.
That was a good line, 'cause friends are friends for all time. Where have my old friends gone? Where are they now? Used to be a walk